Hi, welcome to Paranormal Kativity. I keep getting a lot of requests to make longer videos, so I decided this one's just gonna be kind of rambly and a little bit of like a show and tell and kind of talking about things that are creepy and that freak me out, and it's gonna be a little bit all over the place, but it's also gonna be about creepy stuff, so I hope you enjoy it. If I had my way, my house would be decorated like Halloween year round, but I also like pretty things and houses that look orderly, so it doesn't always happen like that. Sometimes too much stuff is a little overbearing, so I have a lot of Halloween things that do stay up year round, and most of them are kind of inconspicuous. They don't take up much room, but they're just enough to kind of make me like giddy when I see them. And then some things are just too creepy to keep out all the time. One of which is this picture right here. Alex is really creeped out by this picture, and I'll do an insert shot closer up so you can actually see it. It's an Indian guy on a bank of like a little river, and there's a couple mountains and a full moon and a fire and a tent. Something about this painting really creeps him out. Like, he does not want it up anywhere. I grew up with this painting hanging in my house, and it was given to my dad from his family, and he knew it was over 100 years old when he gave it to me. So it's a very old painting. It's done on velvet. It only has a frame at the top and bottom that's wood. Normally it lives in my closet, but I got it out just for this little show and tell. When it comes to things that just kind of creep me out, I thought this would be a good time to disclose some of those. I have a few that are weird. I'm a weird person, I'm not gonna lie to you. So some of the things that creep me out just don't make sense, and so I apologize in advance. But one of the biggest things that creeps me out beyond belief is the sound of cotton. It gives me chills. Or cloth. Like, okay, my little brother, when he was younger, would chew on the necklines of his shirt, and the sound that it would make, it creeps me out. And I grew up with really terrible ear problems. I had multiple surgeries throughout my life on my ears. And so when I'd get in the bath or the shower, I had to put cotton balls in my ears, and we'd put a little bit of Vaseline on them and stick them in, but the sound, and like when I clean my ears, I have to wet down one end of it so that I don't hear it as much, and then whenever I use the other end, it's dry so I don't hear it as much because it's soaking up the rest of the moisture. That doesn't bother me as much, but like even non-cotton sounds occasionally do, like whenever you're removing your nail polish, whether you're using like a cotton pad or a piece of tissue and it gets wet and it makes that creaky sound. Ugh! Like, I seriously have goosebumps right now thinking about it. Or like the thought of babies chewing on socks. Anything with like fabric and mouths, or the sound of cotton. It's really the sound of cotton, like cotton balls being pulled apart is just the most horrifying sound in the world to me. It is so gross and creepy, and I hate it. Another thing that I really, really, really hate is when people flip their eyelids inside out. Like, it really scares the crap out of me. I don't know what it is, and Alex of course knows this, so when we first started dating, he would exploit it by flipping his eyelids inside out and smiling really big and trying to hug me. No. I'm good without that. But I have no problems touching my eyes, applying makeup. I wear contacts. I'm sure you guys probably figured that out since I wear glasses in half my videos. Something that creeps me the F out are ASMR videos. If you don't know what an ASMR video is, you can look it up. YouTube's full of them. They creep me out. It's creepy to me. Some of them are like simulated situations where it'll simulate you getting like your hair brushed, or like the sounds that you hear up by your head, like being simulated. But the thing you hear most often is people whispering, and it's supposed to be very pleasing to some people. Like, their inner ear just really loves hearing people speak in a whisper tone. But by whisper tone, I mean you can hear their spit clacking in their mouth, and it's so nasty. So, like I mentioned before, sometimes I listen to hypnosis and meditation and stuff, and so that stuff's fine. But if I can hear people spit clicking, no. And if I go to some kind of like guided visualization that has any ASMR tag whatsoever, nope, out of there. Something that I did for a very long time to creep myself out that I found very enjoyable was listening to subliminal messages. alone in my room. And they're really scary, like, especially the ones from like old 60s, 70s songs that are played backwards. Even though I know it's very, you know, it's something they did. It's not anything really scary. Something about hearing the human voice backwards is creepy to me, which is probably also why I really like Twin Peaks, because they speak forward, but by speaking forward, they're actually speaking backward and they reverse it. So it sounds backwards, but you can understand what they're saying. Which, if you haven't watched Twin Peaks, when they do that, it's super cool. And there's ways you can do it. Like, as soon as we finished watching the 2 seasons of Twin Peaks, Alex and I, like, got recorders that would play backwards, and we wrote out words backwards, and we practiced speaking backwards. It was really cool. But something about, like, voices backwards just automatically gives me chills. Kind of in the same vein as subliminal messages, some of the ghost hunting tools that I've heard, like the ones that shift through all of the different radio stations and they kind of make that sound, they kind of give me the same chills as subliminal messages, but I want one so bad. So if you guys have any recommendations on where I should get some ghost hunting tools, I really want a ghost box that, like, you can hear the voices through the frequencies immediately rather than doing EVPs, because I'm an instant gratification kind of person when it comes to that stuff. Like, I wanna know what's up. So if you guys have any recommendations on where good ghost hunting equipment would be, please let me know, because I would love to try and do some kind of stuff like that in the future. Of course, you guys know I'm afraid of the dark. That's nothing new, so I don't really need to get into that. Going on from things I'm afraid of, I figure why not talk about some things that I love, or that I find oddly fascinating, or pleasing in some way. I like antiques. I like pinups. Burlesque. Love anything of acrobatic, carnival, freak show, sideshow, culture whatsoever. Fairs. Anything. Although, you know what? I have never been to a circus. I'd probably be on a trapeze somewhere if I'd been introduced to this sooner in life. To demonstrate some of my freak show, sideshow, carnival love, I had the top of my cabinets in my kitchen decorated with like a sideshow theme for a little while. It was very short-lived, but it was very cute and I enjoyed it. You guys know that I'm obsessed with Elvira. Obsessed. I don't think I can stress enough how much I love Elvira. Like, she's so sexy and fun and 80s and punk rock and bad A and ditzy, and she's just everything I've ever wanted to be is Elvira, pretty much. And I am a lover of comedies, and I know that this is a predominantly scary channel, but I just gotta throw out a few comedy things. Parks and Rec is probably the best comedy that's ever been invented, and if you haven't seen Parks and Rec, you probably should, because if Pawnee was a real place, I would totally live there. There's some comedy that I find very funny that's also kind of creepy, so I figured I might as well share that with you. If any of you love Tim and Eric, let me know, because I freaking love Tim and Eric. And I just found out that all of the seasons are on Hulu, and I'm getting caught up because I haven't seen very much of the new seasons, and they're just as good. So Tim and Eric is definitely on my creepy, fun, awesome comedy list. And the artist Leslie Hall from Leslie and the Lies, also a big Elvira fan. She's just like female empowerment along with Midwest arts and crafts and singing about stupid weird stuff, and it's amazing. The funniest thing that I have seen in a really, really long time is also super creepy, and if you're into Tim and Eric and things of that nature, if you haven't seen Too Many Cooks, go Google Too Many Cooks or YouTube or whatever and watch all of it. I think it's like 11 or 12 minutes. It's one of the funniest things I've seen in a really long time, and that's totally my sense of humor. I might have a totally different sense of humor from you, and if I do, that's great. That's cool. But I found it to be one of the most entertaining things I'd seen in a very long time. I have so many of her songs in my car, and I jam out to them all the time. But if you ever watch her videos, they're a little weird, and they're definitely a different kind of sense of humor. But if you're into kind of my taste, you might want to check her out because she's awesome. Tenacious D. Forever and always will live in my funny, weird favorites list of amazing artists because Jack Black is just thebomb.com. And then I also am a huge fan of the internet group that did so many videos way back in the day. They're called Group X, and they did like 55 and Mario Twins and Bang Bang Bang. They're just weird stick figure music videos with creepy faces occasionally and just weird stuff. They're great. So if you've never heard of these, even though they're super old, you should check them out because they're great. Another weird fascination of mine is Will Ferrell. There were a lot of like babes around, you know, like Paul Walker and Freddie Prinze Jr. They were up there on my hot list, but you know who I had posters of all around my room? Will Ferrell. Not even kidding. And my neighbor, who's my best friend, also had a weird fascination for Will Ferrell, so we're the only two people I know of who really genuinely find Will Ferrell that attractive. But we had posters everywhere of Will Ferrell's face. And funny story, while I was in college, shortly after high school, obviously, I had a friend who had a friend working in Chicago whenever he was filming a movie. I want to say he was doing Bewitched at the time. And they were working security in the hotel that he was staying at. And so I begged my friend to please send her friend my phone number to give him. Just to see what happened. And I heard from the friend that she did give it to him in an elevator and he just looked at it and threw away. But at one point in time, he had one of my phone numbers, so that's a score. I am slightly obsessed with New Orleans and New Orleans culture and the way everything looks there and all the plantation homes and the trees. I got to go there one time, but it was on a mission trip, and so it was a very, like, do what we're here to do trip. We had one tourist day, but we didn't really get to go on any of the tours. We went on one tour of the city that was organized by some of the church that we were staying with. So I really didn't get to explore it. I want to go on some freaking vampire tours and werewolf tours and voodoo tours. So at some point I need to go back. Oh, and I want to see Marie Laveau's tomb. I want to go through like the City of the Dead kind of raised cemetery graveyards too. I just think they're beautiful and so creepy. I've watched way too many documentaries about New Orleans. Like I just feel a real connection to that place. So that's definitely one of my like big time fascinations. I have a huge love of zombies. I know I've mentioned this before, but I really love zombies. Plus, zombies are one of the easiest things to dress up as, so it's an easy default for like any occasion that you need to dress up for. Which, speaking of dressing up, another thing that I'm hugely into, obviously besides Halloween, because Halloween's definitely my favorite holiday. That should be a given. But when it comes to like dressing up, if you're not doing a zombie, there are a billion different costumes you can do. I'm big into costumes at Halloween, whether you're going trick-or-treating, having a party, or not. Plus, there's a lot of other instances where you can dress up. I really like cosplaying. We've gone to a few conventions that we covered on one of our other channels. Like, I really like cosplaying as well. I'm a theater director, so I love dressing up for theater things or just dressing up in costumes to be weird and random. I'm a big fan of that. So anything involving costumes or makeup or theatricality, I'm totally down. You guys should do like a whole series dressed up in crazy costumes. That might be something fun to do. Or it might just be weird. Going back to zombies and pinups, I am a big fan of zombie pinups. If you've ever heard of zombie pinups, they're great. And the zombie Disney princess art that I've seen is fantastic. Like, drool-worthy. I am so in love with that art. I have a lot of weird artists that I really, really love. Probably my favorite kind of weird artist is Mark Ryden. I'll try and insert some of his art around me as I speak, so maybe you can check it out and see if you've seen it before. It's beautiful and creepy and gory and strange and just amazing. I adore Mark Ryden's work. There's also an artist who I'm probably going to pronounce her name incorrectly. I apologize in advance. Patricia Piccinini? It's got an extra I at the end, so I'm not sure. I thought it was Pacini, but it looks like there's an extra "ini" on it, so Paccinini. She did these sculptures that I'm sure you've probably seen around the internet, at least one, insert here, But she has a bunch of other sculptures. They're all like humanoid skin and hair covered fantasy creatures that look real. They're really, really cool. I would love to see one of her art shows if it ever somehow comes to my area, because they're just phenomenal. Mind-blowing to me. Like, I wish I had that kind of talent. Stephen Gamel. The art in freaking Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark is just gorgeous and horrifying. I'll do some close-ups of this too, but I spent so many days in my library in elementary school just like going through these books. All my elementary school experience was reading these, R.L. Stine, and getting drawing books and trying to draw. That was it. So it was scary stuff and doodling. It's pretty much my life now. I love it. This is another thing that I just kept for the art. Like, how gorgeous is this 50s housewife cleaning up blood? She's just too hot. It came on the back of a magazine that I got through Horror Block, which I am a super huge fan of, but so beautiful. If you want your house to kind of creep people out in a beautiful way, you should play this radio station that I found online called Radio Dismuke. There's a Facebook page for it, then you can get linked to their website. You can also get it through the app TuneIn. I have TuneIn and Pandora on my phone, and TuneIn, I have Radio Dismuke as my main radio station, but they play solely music from the 20s and 30s, and it's such a cool vibe to have going on. Like, sometimes I listen to it and dance like I'm in an old-timey burlesque show, and then sometimes I just listen to it and have my house have this like weird, creepy retro vibe. And if I have it on while I'm like doing dishes, Alex will like tiptoe downstairs and be like, "What? Where am I?" Like, it sets a creepy tone, but in like the coolest way. I've just always been a big fan of like that era, especially with the show Carnival. And I also really like hip-hop music and rap music, especially 90s and 90s-ish music, but I was super big on the song Fancy. And there was one moment where we pulled into our parking spot outside while Fancy was on, and when we got under this tree, as I stopped, somehow the radio in the car was switching stations, like the frequency was fading and we were getting another one, and it had 1920s, 30s music playing through distortion while you could half hear Fancy, and it was like my mind was blowing up with how amazing everything was at that moment. I was like, this is the best music I've ever heard in my entire life. So that would be, in essence, like what I would love to hear all of the time, is like, within the last 20 years, hip-hop, R&B, rap songs mixed with 1920s and 30s, just old-timey music. If there was somewhere that I could travel outside of the country, it would have to be in regard to like ancient ruins. I've always been drawn to Egypt and mummies and like the sarcophaguses and the hieroglyphics, everything about it. I remember in like 5th grade we got to draw like an Egyptian sarcophagus, and we had like the staffs and the ankhs and everything on, and the big headdresses, and it was like my most favorite thing ever. And then any field trip that I ever went on that had an Egyptian like exhibit going on, I was there. There was this one museum that we got to go to where you crawled through different passageways as if you were inside of a pyramid, and you got to the end of this one like long passage, and there was a clear plate of glass, and you looked down, and like a story below you was the actual like tomb of one of the people. Like, that's where they put the exterior of it. The mummy was on display elsewhere, but like the coffin sarcophagus was there, and it was so cool. So like everything Egyptian, that style, is just fascinating to me. I also really am into like the Mayan ruins, would love to see those. Stonehenge, or any of the other monuments near Stonehenge, like anything like that, I would love to see in person. And then I am huge into like forests and trees and nature. I love the beach, but I really love forests, and we had this tree in my neighbor's backyard growing up. And when we climbed up it, there was like a landing and a ladder. It was kind of like a treehouse, but that treehouse never happened. So it was like a ladder and a landing. And if you climbed out on the branches, there were branches throughout the whole tree with carvings in them. And they'd been there before we got there. And they were just different animal shapes and people shapes. Now, I am sure that it couldn't have been, like, ancient, because it wasn't at the tippy top of the tree. But I feel like it was still very old, like at least 50, 60, 100 years old. But it was just one of the coolest things ever. I love climbing out on that tree and just checking out all of the cool stuff on it. It's just really, really neat. I love abandoned places. I want to go to so many different ones. I love looking at photos of abandoned places, especially like abandoned amusement parks. Those are the best. There's this little island that's abandoned inside of Disney World, and I've never been to Disney World, but I really want to go, and I want to go to this island because I guess it used to be open and it was like a swamp bayou kind of theme, but the power still runs to it and the music still runs to it, but it's blocked off because alligators got too bad, because it's actually in like the marshy part of the park. So you can like break in, there's videos of people who've broken in, and you can get in there and the lights come on at night and all the music plays. Oh, it'd be like heaven to me. If someone can organize a way for me to get there and go there and make a video there, I would be the happiest person in the universe, so let's try and make that happen. When it comes to like amusement parks and fairgrounds, my old fair, I should say our regular fair that comes to town every year, it's changed, like people and carnival amusement companies, I guess, I don't know, over the years. But there was one year where there were 2 attractions with the Weekly World News logo on them, and I loved Weekly World News. It's no longer in publication to my knowledge. If it is, please correct me because I need to get a subscription or something. But I grew up like reading this constantly. I worked at a little grocery store as my very, well, I guess technically second job, but first real job. And every break I would read the Weekly World News. And they're just ridiculous. Like, it's like Jerry Springer and Maury plus the supernatural, which Jerry Springer and Maury I love. The Weekly World News had booths at the fair, and so there was one attraction that was the Headless Woman and one that was the world's biggest rat. Well, if you go, of course I paid for both even though I knew they were crap, but the Headless Woman was a mirror trick. They had a series of mirrors, and I actually knew through somebody that the person who was the Headless Woman was a teenage boy who worked at a restaurant in town. And it was just a person in a dress. There were mirrors all around the head, so you couldn't see the head, and they were petting a cat. And you just walked in, walked along this rail in the front, and then left. Like, that was the whole attraction. It was so crap. And the world's biggest rat, I do believe, was a possum. Just a possum. You had to pay, like, your ticket admission just to look in a box at a possum. I am not even kidding. It was that bogus. But I didn't even care because it was so hilarious to me. And as we were going through the fair, you could hear somebody be like, "Come see the rat, the world's biggest rat." And I was like, "Oh, where am I? I have to go." So like, I'm very easily amused and excited by things that I really love. So yeah, that was a very fun fair. Definitely my favorite one that I think I've ever been to. And on the same topic as like fairs, carnivals, freak shows, you know, acrobats, I am obsessed with contortionists. I think they are the most fascinating physical feat achievement ever. I would love to be one. I've done so many like stretching things, being like, I'm gonna be a contortionist one day, you wait. It's not happening. Some things that I really enjoy: nail polish. I'm sure you probably